오케이, 안녕하세요. 김정은
Hello,
시대
everyone.
북한 경제 문제에 변화
The title of this session is Changes in North Korea's Economic Structure and People's Lives in the Kim Jong-un era. And my name is Cho Dong-jun. I'm from Seoul National University. I will serve as a moderator to keep the time and facilitate the discussion. We don't have a lot of time today. Today we have only 90 minutes, but we have three presenters and three discussants, and many people are watching this on YouTube. So we will give 15 to 20 minutes per presenters, and discussants can spend 5 to 7 minutes. And after that, we will also receive questions on YouTube and have a Q&A session. I will briefly introduce the three discussants. The first presenter is Mr. Son Wook. He is a professor from KDI School of Public Policy and Management, and he is one of the best experts in Korea in relation to North Korean issue. After that, Mr. Daniel Verts will have a discussion. So after one presentation, we'll have one discussion. Then we will check the questions. And then we will have another presentation. And then let me first invite Mr. Sonuk.
Thank you for introducing me as a North Korean expert. So let me share the PowerPoint slide. Okay. In this paper, we investigate the North Korea's economic policy changes by extracting the keywords from the North Korean economic journal called Economic Research, 경제 연구, which is a representative document published by the state. We use the text mining approach to overcome the limitations such as the lack of objectivity and the accuracy of the classification of topics in manual text analysis for North Korean studies. So contrary to the conventional assumption that North Korean economic policies are driven by dogmatic 주체, self-reliance ideology, we find that the economic policies seems to differ depending on the leader and the political circumstances at the time. In particular, since Kim Jong-un assumed office in 2011, the topics have diversified and covered wide range of subjects on capitalism. So we are going to focus on the Kim Jong-un period for today's talk. Okay, so let me skip the introduction. In the studies about the North Korean economy, the concerns about the data shortages and accessibility and credibility have always been raised. So the lack of statistics in particular inhibits the ability to analyze the reforms and clearly serves as a limitation to any research on North Korean economy. So the main significance of this study is that despite the limited data, results can be found with advanced text finding technique. So in this study, the title and the keywords of a paper in economic research is an analytical unit that can track key agenda and policy changes that North Korea has emphasized for its economy. Particularly, this research investigates whether any changes in the economic policies introduced and implemented by Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, and Kim Jong-un can be classified by the characteristics of the keywords used in the titles at the time of their leadership. The main text for this study were extracted from the quarterly journal. That journal provides insights into the changes in North Korea's policies, institutions, and practices regarding the economic policy, trade, and sometimes financial issues. So I think this journal can be a good experimental resource to study the policy changes in North Korea directly or indirectly. We cover the time between 1988 and 2018. And as you can see from this table, the total number of papers have been increasing, especially the number of papers every year since 2019, increased by 10, almost 10, and reached over 130 in 2014, and now it's about 180, which suggests that the Kim Jong-un period, the total number of papers have been increasing. And in terms of research methodology, I don't have much time, so for the sake of saving time, I'm going to skip that, but we basically analyzed the titles and the keywords of all the papers published in those years. Okay, here you can see the dendrogram that classifies the title of the paper for each year from 1988 to 2018 for 30 years. That generated using a hierarchical clustering method. So considering the economic conditions and changes in the economic policies in North Korea, these results of a clustering show a distinct pattern. First subcluster of the second cluster in the middle of the dendrogram covers the period of Kim Il-sung's leadership, basically. In this subcluster, similarity between the annual titles and keywords are very high. And also you can see that early in Kim Jong-il's leadership, 1995, 6, and 7, is included in this subcluster, which suggests that Kim Jong-il followed his father's policy direction without making any major changes in his early leadership period. The second subcluster in this cluster of dendrogram corresponds to the period of Kim Jong-il's leadership. And you can also see that in the first subcluster, left-hand cluster of the dendrogram, is basically the Kim Jong-un's period, which is divided into two subclusters, the first half and the second half of the Kim Jong-un's period. So the results of clustering show that the Kim Jong-un period is not similar to previous periods. The Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il periods are also clustering, but in terms of similarity, they are closer to each other than they are to the Kim Jong-un period. So the results of the clustering show that the Kim Jong-un period is not similar to the previous periods, so we are going to focus on the Kim Jong-un's period to talk about the big policy changes. Okay. Now we are going to show you some figures that indicate the differences between each period based on the appearance and frequency of certain keywords. So this is the frequency of keywords during Kim Il-sung leadership period, and this is the Kim Jong-un period, and this graph shows the Kim Jong-un leadership period, and there is a high frequency of words such as production, knowledge, technology, power, information, and science. So under the Kim Jong-un regime, the weight of titles related to criticism of the capitalist system decreased significantly. Instead, the emergence of words like improving productivity, knowledge, technology. So this indicates that the economic policies are turning to economic growth based on pragmatism. Despite hearing the self-reliance ideology, Kim Jong-un is pursuing a different path than his predecessors did to rebuild the North Korean economy, as announced in 2016 New Year's address. In that address, he focused on the science and technology advancements and achievement of the nuclear state. Okay, and then we also analyzed the probability model that classifies the topics of a document based on the probability that a particular document is a mixture of some small number of topics. And here is the table of the analysis. As you can see from the table, the distribution of topics varies as the Kim Jong-un period progresses. There are many topics on criticizing the capitalism and promoting the construction of a communist society in the Kim Il-sung period, but there's a growing interest in the international economy during the Kim Jong-il period, but ironically, it coincides with the criticism of Western imperialism. But you can clearly see from this table, the Kim Jong-un period deals with a wide range of topics that differ from his predecessors, depicted in the researching words such as power of knowledge and power of science, modern management, economics, statistics, even international financial markets. So we can conclude that the more weight is being placed on practical economic reform ahead of the ideology of successful construction of a communist or social economy than before. All right, here, now I'm going to spend a few more minutes to focus on the Kim Jong-un period to elaborate what happened in the economic research literature. There was a growing interest in the international economy during the Kim Jong-un's period. And additionally, from 2017, the 실마리, which is the Korean word, which corresponds to keywords in English, was added at the end of each chapter. And the topics of the keywords include knowledge, economy, informationization, intellectual property rights, science and tech, tourism, trade zones, and foreign exchange rate, accounting, finance, international banks, and public-private partnership, among others. And another notable change is the increase in the papers covering a variety of topics using econometric models. as well as the ideological discussions. For example, factors that affect the hedge accounting for derivatives transactions, exchange rate forecasting, and management of statistics, and something like a tax returns, etc. So after newest rate was declared in 2016, Kim Jong-un's economic strategy is believed to foster economic development in the face of international economic sanctions, I think. So this is evidenced by such phrases like knowledge economy, streamlining business management, international trade markets, etc. So in short, since Kim Jong-un assumed office in 2011, the topics have diversified and covered wide range of subjects on capitalism. Okay, this is all I prepared today. Thank you.
예, 감사합니다. 북한 경제연구라는 학술지에 관련된
Thank you very much.
텍스트 마이닝 기법을 통해서
With the text and mining technology, you showed us that there was a change in the North Korean economy and showed the evidence. Thank you very much. And I would like to invite Mr. Daniel for the discussion.
Thank you, Professor Cho, and thanks very much to Dr. Ukson for his presentation and for all of our panelists and discussants here today, as well as the KDI School and George Washington University Institute for Korean Studies for organizing. I thought that Dr. Son's presentation applied a very sophisticated data modeling analysis to North Korean economic discourse in Gyeonggi-gu, and I thought that his presentation will be very well complemented by the two other presenters we have coming up next. Young-ho Kim on the microeconomics of certain market interactions in North Korea, and Bill Brown on the macroeconomics of North Korea's foreign exchange rates and foreign trade, that really will help us get a sense of what this change in North Korean discourse has meant in practice during the Kim Jong-un period, which is, I think, a very important issue for understanding what is this change in rhetoric and change in focus in North Korean economic writing in Gyeonggi-gu meant for actual change in the economy. So that leads me to make a few observations and comments about the findings of Dr. Son's research, which I found to be quite fascinating. First, I think it makes a lot of sense to periodize the output of Gyeonggi according to the leader in charge of North Korea in any given year. The data analysis certainly bears that out and makes intuitive sense as well. But I think that this classification may also tend to obscure the importance of certain policy shifts that happened under any particular leader. I had the opportunity to look a little more closely at Dr. Son's presentation earlier, and I thought it was interesting that the dendrogram in figure 3 shows several observable subgroupings where a consecutive series of years are clustered together. We can see one cluster, for example, for the 2002 to 2005 period of tentative economic reform in North Korea, as well as a distinct cluster for the 2006 to 2010 period of economic policy retrenchment that followed, all under the general heading of economic policy during the later Kim Jong-il period. Additionally, within the Kim Jong-un era, the years 2017 and 2018 are clustered separately from the 2011 to 2016 period. And I'd venture that the hypothesis that this marks a rhetorical turn in North Korea towards greater emphasis on self-reliance following the imposition of wide-ranging international sanctions circa 2016 and 2017. And I predict that if a similar analysis were applied to the 2019 and 2020 publications of Gyeonggi-gu, they'd tend to fit more aligned with the 2017 and 2018 discourse than the earlier discourse in the Kim Jong-un era. Furthermore, I have a minor quibble with 1 year of his classification. I don't think I'd classify the year 2011 as a year under the Kim Jong-un period, because Kim only took power at the end of that year, and it presumably would take some time for new policy priorities to be reflected in Kim Jong-un. I think that's important because it does show some continuity in economic policy between the end of the Kim Jong-il era and the start of Kim Jong-un's era. A second set of key points, looking at the keywords from the Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, and Kim Jong-un eras, also reveals some very interesting continuities as well as changes between those eras. We've seen the word plan fall into apparent disuse, reflecting the shift from central planning to North Korea's pseudo-marketized economy. Similarly, the terms agriculture and rural area seem to drop off after the Kim Il-sung era, and perhaps that reflects a hesitancy among the writers for Kim Jong-un to discuss agricultural policy in great depth. And additionally, as Dr. Sun pointed out, although there's been a very strong emphasis on science and technology in the Kim Jong-un era, it was also rhetorically prominent under Kim Jong-il, and I think it might be an interesting area of further research to discern how the discussions of science and technology differed from the period of one leader to the other. And a few final points. I think that a logical next step for this quantitative research would be to combine it with qualitative analysis that gets more into the substance of North Korean writing and economic policy, using the text mining approach to see what categories are most important, and then using more qualitative analysis to dig a little more deeply into those categories. And I think contextual analysis of how Kim Jong-un fits into the broad structure of economic policy making in North Korea could also be very interesting. I'm curious, who are the authors for Kim Jong-un? Who's the intended audience? To what extent do its articles reflect internal debate about economic policy? And how has the scope for that debate changed over time? And a final note, according to 38 North, Kim Jong-un reportedly ceased publication in early 2021. And I'm very curious to get Dr. Son's thoughts on the implications of this move, both in terms of its impact on the ability of outsiders to research the North Korean economy, and what it might say about contemporary thinking in North Korea about how wide the scope of debate and discussion over economic policy should be. So thanks again for a great presentation, and look forward to the rest of the discussion.
예, 감사합니다. 우선 손욱 선생님.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Son. Dr. Son, how would you respond to what?
Yes, I agree with Daniel Watt's comment that I need to focus more details on each period, 1 year period or 3 year period, especially 2017 and 18 and 2019 and 2020 for Kim Jong-un's period. Because we found that from the dendrogram, this period could be quite different from the early period of Kim Jong-un's regime. And I also agree that this text mining approach, which is the quantitative, should be combined with the more elaborated qualitative research. Probably you can also find out some keywords from this text mining result, and then we read the main text of all the economic research, and also maybe other important documents like newspapers and also the annual address, etc., to see whether the documents in the economic research is kind of complete coincide with the other more important documents produced by the North Korean state. But as you can see from this paper, this is basically the 30-year analysis to compare the three Kim's regime. So the Daniel Watt's suggestion could be the next stage for the further research after this. Thank you very much.
예, 감사합니다. 혹시 다른 발표자
Thank you very much. And is there any other question or comments from other presenters or discussants?
Okay, Mr. Brown. 음성이 지금 꺼져 있는 상태입니다.
I think you are on mute.
Now, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, thanks a lot. I used to look at Kim Jong-un quite a lot when I was in the government, in our U.S. government, because I could get people to translate it for me. It's very difficult. I can read some Korean, but it's very difficult, laborious for me to read through it. So I'm very pleased that you all go through it and analyze it. One thought I've always had, and I don't know if you can answer it or not, it's maybe a little bit tricky one, but each article, of course, has an author. And I was wondering if there's a way to sort of cluster the authors into different specialties. I'll say specialty, not political, but sort of like a group of people, scholars who look at national income accounting, for example, or another one that looks at trade, or another one that looks at juche, clusters of scholars, with the idea that eventually, hopefully, many of us, some of us, probably not me, but some of you all will be able to contact them and organize conferences, and it'd be very useful to have a grouping of people who are in North Korea who are experts at certain categories. Just wondering if you all have done that.
Okay, thank you for your suggestion. Actually, the papers in the economic research are related to discuss and disseminate and maybe summarize some economic concepts and modern trend in economic and financial markets. So these papers are not the academic contribution at all.
Yeah,
And
right.
also the papers are very short, as you know. It's like a 3 to 4, 5 page, just descriptive papers. So as you said, the authors might be not the professional in the field, maybe probably hired by the government, state. So it's very worthwhile to classify the authors depending on their papers. And fortunately, one of our co-authors, the Chang-Yong Choi, has been working for that project. So he is collecting all the authors and subgrouping based on the papers. So if I have a chance, maybe I can ask him to disseminate the current working paper. Okay. Thank you.
예, 감사합니다. 혹시 다른 분 중에 발표자
Thank you.
있으시죠?
Is there any question?
여보세요.
예, 임은철
저기 조
선생님.
교수님,
예,
제가 요 부분 관련해서 제가 좀 의견을
Professor Cho,
내도 됩니까?
can
예,
I
괜찮습니다.
make some suggestion? Yes, please.
우리 손욱 교수님 아주 좋은.
Professor Son, thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. Thank you.
이 북한 경제 연구를 한 30년째 지금 하고 있는 입장에서.
And I've been studying the North Korean economy for the last 30 years, and I have a little bit of different opinion. And let me give you a comment.
참고로 이제 이 경제 연구기는
Just for your information, the economic research you mentioned
국내에 들어오지 않고 있습니다.
is not coming to South Korea starting from last year, maybe because of the COVID-19.
북한이 이제 방역 조치.
North Korea is in quarantine. They are locking down themselves and they are not distributing their publication to outside of North Korea. So we do not have access to economic research in South Korea. That's the first comment I want to make. the authors of the economic research are professional scholars, mostly. And actually, I know some of them, and some of them are the scholars I met in the Yanbian University. I met them personally, and they have a high professional expertise. They usually graduated from the Kim Il-sung University or the Social Institution of North Korea. They are experts. As Mr. Brown mentioned, the clustering of the author sector by sector can be really important. And as you know, the scholars have their own expertise of the research. So even the same author, when they write something recently, it is in higher quality because they are building up their expertise, which means the latest article is in higher quality. And Dr. Song, you mentioned that the North Korean recent changes, especially the changes after the 2020, are not included in your paper. I do understand that you have analyzed the economic research that was published before 2020. Yes, that's natural. But after the 2019, especially after the Hanoi summit meeting between North Korea and the US, the economic policy of North Korea went into the drastic change. For example, especially the Kim Jong-un regime focused on the science and technology and the knowledge economy. Yes, that's true. But the self-reliance is something that they are underlining more and more. Self-reliance is the key word. In the 8th Party Congress, the economic policy has changed significantly. Due to limited of time, I cannot give you the full explanation. And your research so far is really wonderful, and I learned a lot from you. But after the 2020, there has been a significant change, especially after the Jan of the 2020. And I just wanted to underline there has been the significant change. Please keep that in mind in your future research. Thank you. Thank you. The text mining has the advantage and the disadvantage. Yes, as Dr. Son said, the 3 clustering is showing the macro level differences. But in the dendrogram, when we take a look at the consistency and the differences within the cluster, there is a certain limitation for sure. So the text mining has the advantage and disadvantage. We need to take care of that, and the disadvantage should be complemented in the future. And please share the future research. Thank you very much.
Since there is no further question, I would like to move on to the next presenter. Professor William Brown will make a presentation, and Professor Liam will make a comment. Professor Brown, you can spend 20 minutes.
Okay, let me, I have some slides here I'd like to show. I think it'll help speed it up a little bit. So my topic that I was given was the changing role of currency and finance in the Kim Jong-un era. Now, whoever assigned topics knows me pretty well because this is my very favorite topic. I love to talk about money issues in North Korea. I've been doing this for quite a long time. And part of the reason I love to follow it is I think in the world of people looking at North Korea, it's an area that people don't pay enough attention to. Even some economists don't pay enough attention to money issues in North Korea. I think I understand why, but I think it's becoming very important now to focus a great deal of attention on what's going on with money kind of issues. I'm going to talk about Kim Jong-un's policy, but it's useful to go back in time to see what his inheritance was. from his grandfather and father. Now, most of y'all will know this, but just to remind you, in the Kim Il-sung era, right after World War II and then on to 1956, Kim Il-sung gradually, slowly developed his command economy system. But right after the Korean War between 53 and 56, he very much sped it up. And by 56, North Korea had pretty much fully transitioned to a command economy system. Command economy means money doesn't operate. Instead, a command operates. The leadership decides what to make and how to distribute it. Money plays a very little role, very small role. Now, money circulated in the economy, won circulated, but it was really secondary to rations, ration tickets, and state plan allocations. There's no real store of value in the money, or it wasn't a required medium of exchange. So, classical definition, the won then really wasn't money. It was the private sector really didn't operate, and prices were determined by the state and were just generally designed to promote investment, not consumption. So they got very rapid development, very rapidly built up a capital, state-owned capital, but the people were very inconvenienced because they didn't produce many consumer goods. Then if you jump to the Kim Jong-il era, in the 1990s, Soviet aid and Eastern European aid had really held up the Kim Il-sung system. When that disappeared, the command system broke down. And with the breaking down of that system, there's a famine. And with the famine, ration distributions weren't made, and everything really started to transition to a money system. There was plenty of won in circulation, but there's way too much of it. So there's a huge amount of inflation. The markets really weren't legal, but they were pervasive. Everybody started using markets, and this won that just spiraled out of control. And with that, you had a basic market system developing with money. The money wasn't any good. So US dollars and Chinese yuan naturally started seeping into the economy. That led to what I call the 2009 currency fiasco. By the end of the Kim Jong-il era, market and ration prices and wages differed by 50 times, not 50%, 50 times. It's totally crazy. And that created endemic corruption. So Kim Jong-il, his administration basically he had a huge problem, and so he tried to solve it by sucking up the foreign money and tried to unify the prices at the state levels by redenominating won. But that was a total disaster. People panicked as their won savings disappeared. And it forced the government to relent, but probably too late. This fiasco in 2009, I'm convinced, was a big lesson for Kim Jong-un. After all, Kim Jong-un at the time was just preparing to take the reins of power. And this must have been a big event for him to study and learn from. So as I've categorized Kim Jong-un's 10 years now, I picture it kind of as a half-step reforms, financial reforms. And these are continuing. There's not like it's stop and start. They kind of come and go. And we're always needing to sort of pay attention to what the state is right now. I think the state today might be different than a year ago. One of the main things is he's allowed foreign currency to circulate at will. Now, this creates kind of a partially dollarized economy. And in other dollarized economies, this has served to dampen inflation. The reason for that is if you can think of the foreign money, the US $100 bill, for example. It's a new good for citizens to try to buy. And so instead of buying a shirt or some corn or rice or something like that, they'll buy a $100 bill. It's a new good for them to purchase. So there are more goods, same amount of money, so that reduces inflation. More importantly, I think, and this is something the human rights people should, I think, be paying a lot of attention to. For the first time, the North Korean people had a financial savings vehicle, US dollars, and to a degree, Chinese renminbi. This would have caused people private savings to have soared. Imagine in Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-un eras, there's no way for a person to save any money because won was rapid, it would inflate away. It wasn't thought of as real money. But now with real money, people could buy the $100 bills, stick it in their kimchi pot, and save, okay? Huge advantage for the people. It gives them some cushion, some security. They can bribe the policeman. The policeman needs the money. Everybody needs the money. So it's a huge positive, I think, for North Korea that this foreign currency could circulate. He also encouraged factory autonomy, gave certain factories pricing and production authority. But here, I'm very confused as to how much he went that direction. And I'd appreciate you all's ideas on that. Seems like he didn't go very far. The market pricing would have increased productivity for sure, and that would dampen inflation by creating new products, especially in the tech sector. And a third important item that was pointed out to me by Professor Che Ji-young, or KDI, in an article he wrote. I was just reading it here in the recent KDI 2021 Outlook. He talks about the new central bank law of 2015. And I'm thinking this is a very important event, creating a more solid central bank. It gave the central bank authority for exchange rate and loan activity, in effect taking them away from the finance ministry. I think a very important thing that we should be paying attention to. But as I said, it's kind of a half-step reforms. A pilot program he started to decentralize farms seems to have stalled out within a couple of years. And it certainly has, maybe there's a little decentralization, but it certainly has not moved to decollectivization, something I think is terribly needed in North Korea. Many state enterprises were excluded from this autonomy development, and they were required to support the plan and the plan prices, not the market prices. The state continued to set prices for key goods, especially electricity, other utilities, but especially electricity, far too low. In effect, electricity is free in North Korea, and so it's wasted and not available. It's it's very predictable. But they've refused to raise the price for electricity across the board. Now they keep talking about it, metering, and I keep thinking they're about to do that, but they keep not doing that. I think it's a big problem. Most importantly, though, without property rights, without private property rights, private savings flowed into this cash, into US dollars and yuan cash, and not into productive investments. Now, there's an exception with the small-scale entrepreneurs at Donju, and especially in higher-scale housing, maybe. But generally, I've seen very little in the way of productive investment in North Korea during this Kim Jong-un era. So in a way, the macroeconomy has shifted from the Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-un, Kim Jong-il period, where it was state investment-led, to now in the Kim Jong-un era, private consumption-led. The problem, that sounds good maybe, but there's no investment. So it's a dead-ended kind of development. No increase in aggregate demand. The private consumption just offset the decline in state investment. So there's no investment. No inflation. Most critically, though, I think where they are now is state wages remained at these fixed low levels, while the market productivity-related wages soared. State wages, last I've seen, are set at still at about 3,000 to 5,000 won per month. Now, of course, with a lot of ration perquisites, but I think the value of those perquisites are declining. Meanwhile, private wages soared to 300, even 500,000 won per month, but without the rations. Now, investors could make, especially speculators, could make a lot more. So you get a very much of a dual economy in North Korea now that's extremely dysfunctional and prone to corrupting the officials. But it worked, according to this data. We watch this continually. I plotted this out every month. This is North Korean won per US dollar 2012 to 2018. You see the hyperinflation. Get my highlighter here. Hyperinflation in Kim Jong-il era, right? The won goes from 1,000 to 8,000. But then beginning in about 2012, the rate flattens. I used to call it a pegged rate at about 8,000 won per dollar. On this kind of graph, up means up of the value of the dollar, okay? It's per dollar. So a very flat won, almost pegged to the dollar. And inflation diminished as well. So he really did get control of a big problem, inflation and deflation of the money. Something I think he should be credited for. Now, how might they have done that? I just have a theory here. Welcome any kind of comments on it. A dollarized economy really creates huge constraints on monetary policy. It's in an odd way, very much like a currency board system like Hong Kong has. The central bank loses control over monetary policy because everything is subordinated to keeping that exchange rate steady. I could hazard a guess that Kim Jong-un ordered his banking people, keep that exchange rate steady. We can't afford this hyperinflation anymore. That puts people on the streets. Can't do that. So keep that steady. So they took that to task. Now, in order to stabilize one, the central bank would then have had to set an extremely tight monetary policy, restricting new loans to state enterprises and not printing any new cash. And the finance ministry would have required a very tight fiscal policy because the central bank wouldn't finance new government debt. The combination, tight monetary fiscal policy, would have shoved the economy into a deep recession by 2017. And I think that's what happened. The evidence, you can see evidence of shortage of won and cash in markets even now. See people cleaning money like there's not any new money, laundering money in the way. Attempts to issue bonds to build that hospital that seemed to fail. And a lot of fee increases by state organs. Ordinarily, you would raise taxes in this situation. They don't have a tax system, so they just raise fees. And then in this year's state budget, we see only a tiny increase in government expenditures, despite very ambitious planned goals. So this is my theory. This is how they're trying to control the won. Then, though, the sanctions and the coronavirus hits starting 2017 and then through 2020. Now, North Korea normally runs about a $500 million per year observable goods deficit. And my argument has always been that it's probably offset by about equivalent services transfers surplus. So the current account in normal times is normally about balance. Well, if you think about it, it has to be because North Korea doesn't have any credit. It's virtually bankrupt. Nobody will lend them money. So if you don't have a MasterCard, you can't run debt, right? So they're basically forced into a balanced current account. But in 2017, of course, with the Chinese jumping on board the sanctions, they collapsed. North Korea's exports to China collapsed. And this led, imports did not quite collapse. They fell, but didn't collapse. This led to a huge increase in the deficit. probably an outflow of dollars in yuan. This would have scared the central bank, and the central bank would have had to put in an even tighter monetary policy. So a reduction in dollars means, well, we got to reduce the amount of yuan in circulation by the same amount. How do you do that? You call in loans, you stop making new loans. Very tight monetary policy. And of course, we see the economy starting to tank in 2018, 2019. By 2020 now, imports also collapse due to the border closure and probably also a lack of hard currency. So the current account was again in balance. Now, the tight monetary policy probably continued, causing the yuan to reverse course and rise in value as the economy fell into a really deep recession. So here's this trade data. You've probably all seen it. Let me just point out this period here. The blue line, I think it's a dark blue, these are North Korean exports, Chinese imports. They collapsed in 2017 and have been virtually zero ever since. This is China's data. But the important thing here is imports stayed up through 2019. And so this is this big deficit I'm talking about. But then in 2020, with the closure, imports collapsed. So now you see it's back down to balanced trade, balanced at zero, in effect. Chucha economy, right? So this is the balance. You see this big red part is North Korea's deficit. But the deficit has disappeared, basically, you see. So what's the important thing is on the exchange rate. This is US dollar, yuan per dollar. Here's this 8,000 rate that was so steady for so long. But then in October of 2020, suddenly the yuan jumps in value. This is the dollar falling in value, right? Very surprising. Most of us would have thought it would go the other way. But with tight monetary policy, this makes a lot of sense. It's the only way I can explain it, actually. But what's happened from that very steady exchange rate, very steady prices through 2017, you run into an extremely volatile period, really volatile, at least according to the data, the only data that we get from Daily NK and from Asia Press. I wish we had more data, but I think the two do a pretty good job. Look at how volatile it is. And this, I did an earlier version of this graph without this. On Friday, just this last Friday, the one that says the yuan fell in value, the dollar jumped in value from, I think, 4,900 up to 6,700 in 1 week. Wow, that's incredible volatility of exchange rate, suggesting maybe a poor data collection, something. So I called Asia Press, and they confirmed it. They said, well, this happened. We're confused too, but they said it's happened 3 different places. And then you see the same thing with the yuan, Chinese yuan, only it's a little more exaggerated. These are on the same scale. So the yuan fell even more against yuan than the dollar, which makes even less sense. Now, one thing that's I've found over time very encouraging is I've always tracked the yuan dollar rate, the observed rate, what we call the cross rate in Pyongyang, what you would change dollars and yuan for in Pyongyang or in Jeju or someplace inside North Korea. And for years, that was very equal to the international rate for the renminbi or the dollar. You see there's just, this is the Fed's measure of renminbi yuan, exactly on, that tells you it's a good market working, right? No room for arbitrage. But again, in October of last year, suddenly it starts gyrating, and it's gyrating like crazy now. For example, that big jump in the dollar on Friday was not matched by a jump in the yuan. Man, this makes very little sense, because you'd think somebody could easily make a lot of money. After all, that is saying Chinese, you can buy a yuan for 11 yuan equal a dollar, whereas in New York it's 6.4. So easy to make money if you could arbitrage that difference. Something is broken. That is telling me something is broken in these markets. Now, overall, let me just conclude a couple of comments. I think Kim's singular economic achievement, which I've been touting for several years, is this stability in the exchange rate and in prices. And with that stability in a money, creating almost a good won money by eliminating inflation, really is a big boost to markets. And investment in private activities is a great thing to have stable money. But I'm afraid it's in big danger right now with what we're seeing in the last year. And with that danger is the potential to disrupt the political and economic system. Inflation and money stealing like 2009 will do that. And an issue now would be hugely bigger than 2009 because the economy is so much more monetized. Now, second point, tight monetary policy has pushed the economy into a severe recession. And it's a no investment kind of recession. Now, the public, the good thing, public has much more power now than in previous regimes, given their private holdings of foreign exchange, yuan and dollars, and even the stability of the yuan gives them much more power, use of money compared to the state. The state is losing control. And for a lot of us, think that's kind of a good thing, as long as it doesn't go too far. Now, the state budgets down here, the state budgets and wages are still severely constrained due to the need to protect yuan against circulating dollars and yuan. Now, the textbook solution to that is to sell state assets to the private sector, thus easing the budget constraint, while raising state salaries. They badly need raising, increasing prices of state-supplied goods, especially electricity, and allowing private property rights to encourage private sector productivity. Now, that's the textbook solution. Interesting thing to me is I think elements of all that is happening. Not fast enough, not far enough, and maybe not enough to stave off a financial collapse. It could happen any day, I think. But at least they seem to be moving in the right direction in all of those. The other point I like to make is all of that could be done in the context of these Juche economy, in the context of these UN sanctions, and in the context of a border closure even. They don't need to trade to make these kind of changes. Trading would hugely help them, of course. But a lot of these changes they could make on their own, and this is what I think that they're trying to do now. But the odd thing is, the critical thing for them, the textbook solution is basically to sell the state to the private sector. This is what China's been doing for 30 years. This is what North Korea needs to do. The state owns the whole country, so it can sell a lot and still have a lot. This is what I would argue they need to be doing. So any questions and comments? And I appreciate that many of y'all know a lot more about this than I do.
예, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
중앙은행이 이렇게 강력하게 통화
The
정책을
Central Bank of the
수행하고
North
있을
Korea,
거라고 생각은 못했었는데
I didn't know that they are implementing very tight monetary policy. So
우선 임은철
the
선생님께서
presentation was
의견을
really
주시고요. 그리고
interesting. And we will
분들도
turn
의견을 줄수
to
있습니다.
Professor
임은철 선생님
Lim,
부탁드립니다.
and we'll also turn to other people.
선생님, 저 뮤트 됐습니다.
You're on mute, Mr. Lim.
예. 그 윌리엄 브라운 그 교수님
Professor William Brown.
정말 우리가 참고할 게 많은 것 같습니다.
I think we can learn many things from your presentation.
우리 국내 한국
As a matter of fact, in Korea, we have many North Korean scholars, and many people cannot study because of this exchange rate issue. Now, it is very difficult to explain the volatility of exchange rate in North Korea. However, Mr. William Brown, you made a good presentation, so I believe it is worthy to look this presentation once again. Basically, in North Korea, in order to understand the financial and monetary policy, the most important thing is the fact that we need to understand the perspective of Chairperson Kim, how he understands the financial and monetary issues, and what kind of plans are suggested by Chairperson Kim. So, basically, we need to understand how he thinks, and we also need to understand the implementation direction of Labor Party and administration. First of all, North Korea is highly interested in the financial reform. The international society implemented sanctions, but even before that, so in the mid 2000s, exactly in 2001, North Korea embarked on the financial reform. It is because before 2001, they saw that the market economy is spreading in the country, so they wanted to manage and control the financial market and the economic market in an effective manner. So in 2001, they initiated the financial reform, and they also studied the other countries that changed their regime. As a result, in 2004, they established the central bank law. And in 2006, for the first time, they also established commercial bank law. So, in preparation for the financial reform, the first fruit they had was the commercial bank law. And once we understand the commercial bank, then we can understand the financial reform in North Korea. But one of the biggest pain points for Chairman Kim is in 2015, they had a conference and they also released a document. So the meeting was related to the financial and employee meeting. So they gathered the financial employees and financial officials. They gathered all the financial related employees in Pyongyang in 2015. And Chairman Kim said that now the dollarization is ongoing, but our reliance on dollar is too severe. And that's why we cannot maintain our self-reliance. So it is very candid. North Korean currency value should be increased to maintain a stable value. Otherwise, we cannot achieve self-reliance. That was very important comment. And he also mentioned that there are a lot of currencies that is not controlled by the banks. So we need to manage and control the circulating currencies out of the control of the banks. And he also said that we need to encourage people to save money in banks. But the biggest problem in relation to this is banks are not reliable. And people do not trust the banks. So
2015년
Chairman Kim instructed that we need to build a trust among people.
이게 굉장히 중요한 거죠. 자,
I believe it is very important comment.
김정일 위원장이 이런 얘기를 하면 이제 화폐라든지
And
이제 금융 재정
in monetary and financial
무조건 이해해야
area,
무조건.
officials need to implement the instruction from Chairman Kim.
화폐, 그러니까 특히 이제 외환 관리를 어떻게 할 것이냐는
So
고민을 많이 하게
they
되고,
consider the ways to
그래서
control and manage
정부의
currency,
개입 수준이 높아집니다.
and the level of intervention of the state has increased. From 2016, there was a strengthened control over the foreign currency.
시간이 너무 부족해서
I don't have enough time.
이 답변을 아니 그 발표에 대해서
So,
제가 많이 좀 설명을 하고 싶은데 제가 지금
I
시간
wanted
때문에
to
많이
explain many
초조해갖고
things, but due to the limited time, I'm not sure how can I summarize this
상당히 좀 복잡하고
because the issue is really complex. And when it comes to the finance and monetary issue, there are a lot of details we need to understand. Once we understand the financial area and monetary area, then we can understand the North Korean economy. So I will try to keep the time.
외화는 통제를 하고
They controlled over the foreign currency, and they also made effort to increase the value of won.
그런데 실제로 지금 현 단계에 보면
Indeed, when we look at the current
북한
situation,
시장이 코로나19
due to the COVID-19 pandemic, North Korea closed the border between North Korea and China, and trade has been suspended. As a result, as mentioned by William Brown, now the value of won has been increased.
지금 그 북한 당국의 적극적인 개입에 의해서
But
이런 현상이 일어나느냐?
I'm questioning whether this is because of the active intervention of the state. Because regardless of the intervention of the state, the exchange rate is really volatile. In 2009, they implemented the denomination, and for a while, per dollar, the value of won was 8,000. So 1 to 8,000 was the value which was embraced by North Korean people as a stable value. I checked the exchange rate several days ago, and in Pyongyang, the exchange rate was 4,900 won per dollar. So, and now the rate has been almost half of the previous value. And due to the changing exchange rate, we can also observe the price value, but the value of the rice is maintained at the steady level. Of course, North Korea is importing several goods from China, so they show some change in value. But anyways, when we explain the change in exchange rate or price level, we first need to understand the policy change. Then we can understand what is the level of an intervention from the state. So let me share my opinion. Now, Chairman Kim Jong-un is emphasizing that turning into market economy is not plausible. So, however, the state is not minimizing or controlling the market activities. But he wants to manage and control all the activities. It is the same for the financial area and monetary area. With the market economy's introduction, now private sector got more control over the financial area and monetary area. But even for the private finance, Kim Jong-un would like to manage and control. So I believe now we are in the transition period. As for the financial and monetary policy, I believe COVID-19 pandemic is contributing. But whether this change is beneficial to the livelihood of general public, I'm not sure. Because, as mentioned by Professor William Brown, many people save their money in foreign currency. But as far as I know, from September or October last year, the exchange rate has changed a lot. As a result, the property value of the general public has been decreased by half. They saved a lot of yuan and dollars, but now their asset value is only half of the previous value. We don't have a lot of time. Let me finish within 1 minute. So what is important here is the fact that those who have the dollars in their asset are usually elites and high officials in the party. And the central regime also understands this. So they are concerned whether this control over the foreign currency is really helpful. As I mentioned before, having a discussion on this issue within 5 minutes is not possible. I'm sorry that I overran. But anyways, I believe this is a topic we need to spend more time.
Thank you. This topic requires a lot of time. But yes, I am curious too. So starting from 2015, the central bank was created, the commercial bank was created to stabilize the value of the Korean won. But the won value is dropping and the dollar value is going up. Mr. Brown, what do you think is the value drop of the North Korean won and the US dollar value is going up?
Yeah, so no, actually it's the other way around. The won has been going up, the dollar's been going down generally. But the key thing here is the volatility of it. Huge jumps, so some people with volatile prices, exchange rates, speculators jump in. And a speculator means somebody's making a whole lot of money and somebody else is losing a whole lot of money. And that's terrible for the socialist, quote, socialist government. Some people making a huge amount of money betting against the dollar or the won, whatever way they go. The last thing they want is volatility, speculation in the financial markets. That's the whole idea of Marxism, is to get rid of financial markets, right? And here they are in droves, making some people rich, some people terribly poor. So it's I think politically unstable proposition here that we've run into. As I say, though, the dollar jumped last week by 20% or so. So you can't tell really quite what's going on, except that I do think it's this overly tight monetary policy, fiscal policy. One other thing I would say, though, is what you said about Kim Jong Un wanting a stable, getting rid of dollarization. In fact, it's very helpful to me. I remember him saying that now, but I hadn't remembered it when he said it. So that's very important. Kim's idea about dollarization, does he like it or not? He can't get rid of it, I don't think, but he's trying a little bit to get rid of it. The problem with raising the value of the yuan is basically you have to stop producing yuan, right? If you keep printing yuan, the value of yuan drops unless there's a huge boost in productivity. There's no boost in productivity, so I think his number one problem, in my view, that they never talk about, we never talk about, I wish we would, is the wage scale of the government. You know, where millions of people working for the state, all the school teachers, all the policemen, all the doctors, all the nurses, all the party people, all the military, millions of people, they're paid at this incredibly low socialist wage of, you know, 3,000 to 5,000 won, which won't buy a cup of coffee in the market, right? They can't buy a cup of coffee in a marketplace with their state monthly wage. Totally ludicrous. And of course, they get perks. They get free coffee in the machine in their office. So, but it's just in a very, very inefficient system that's going to come apart. And what's happening now is incredible corruption of the state apparatus. So school teachers can't afford a cell phone on their stupid 3,001 per month. Their children, their students have a cell phone because their mom is in the marketplace. You know, so I think it's the corruption involved. Is just wrecking the North Korean system, and you see this with Kim Jong-un, how frustrated he is. He doesn't really know how to fix it. As I say, there is a fairly simple fix. It's the Chinese fix: selling your property, sucking up the yuan, selling coal mines, selling apartments. They still have plenty of apartments. They can still be socialist. They could sell half the country and still be socialist. But something is holding them back in selling the collectives, getting rid of those dead-gum cooperatives, privatizing. That should be what they're doing. That's the way he could anchor, build up his yuan, make the yuan a good currency.
예, 감사합니다. 아마 김정은 위원장이 브라운 선생님을
Thank you.
초대해가지고서
Probably
의견을 좀 들어야
Kim
될 것
Jong-un should
같습니다.
invite you, Mr. Brown. In the interest of the time, let me move on to the next one. Mr. Yano Kim, please.
Okay, thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, let me start my presentation. Let me address today's main theme by discussing how mobile telecommunications changed North Korea's markets. So since Kim Jong-un took power in 2011, cell phones have become so popular in North Korea that a young man without a cell phone cannot even find a girlfriend. Even young students are seen talking on their cell phones in the streets of major cities in the country, as you can see in the picture. The North Korean mobile telecom market has seen dramatic subscriber growth since late 2008, when they introduced a 3G service. And now the Koryo Link, their first mobile telecom service provider, their subscribers is estimated around 4 million, plus Pyeol, the second mobile telecom service provider, is estimated to have around 1 million. So all in all, 2 out of every 10 North Koreans are using cell phones, it is estimated, which is amazing in a country like North Korea. North Koreans are fully utilizing the new mobile technology by combining it with private ground transportation service, Sobicha in Korean. And this has led to rapid changes to the extent that they may be called the logistics revolution in North Korea. There are truck or bus drivers who provide courier service like UPS or FedEx in America. And for the merchants, all they need is the shipper, recipient, and driver's cell phone numbers. As a result, you don't see runner merchants, 달리기 장사꾼 anymore, who used to travel long distance to make profitable trade. And meanwhile, connecting through a phone call has opened up a new business era of so-called stay-at-home merchants, 앉아서 장사하기 in Korean. And they even have so-called bullet delivery man riding very fancy motorcycles, most likely imported or smuggled from China. So assisted by the rapid exchange of information, market information, the market system is evolving to create close ties between 서비차 operators. As you can see in the chart, the center, you can see 서비차. So the 서비차 operators in the picture, and the wholesale and retail merchants, brokers, fuel traders or smugglers, checkpoints, and other associated actors along the supply chain. They're all connected. So bringing in new customers, pricing freight charges, transferring settlement costs in cash, trading or smuggling gas, and even tense situations at checkpoints are all managed efficiently through communications on cell phones. And thanks to these changes, North Koreans have also come to increasingly rely on cell phone communications for their financial transactions. So when they want to make long-distance payments or money transfers, they use private networks of wealthy merchants, 돈주, as we discussed in the previous presentations. They function as private local bank branches. So like the Hawala transactions popular in the Middle East and North Africa, the money transfer do not take place in cash, but instead they are based on communications between members of a network of 돈주. And North Koreans also actively transfer airtime or prepaid call minutes for settling small sums. So this is how it works. The recipient could in turn transfer call minutes they got to other people or to professional airtime traders for money. And this indicates North Koreans treat call minutes for use on cell phones as a proxy for money or cash. And that's one of the reasons North Koreans call the prepaid call minutes 전화돈 or phone money. So phone money transfers can also take place if the recipients agree to provide goods or services at agreed prices. So it can happen with marketplace merchants, retail stores, taverns, restaurants, or bus ticket sellers, you name it. So when purchasing small quantities of goods or services, phone money is a good substitute for cash. And merchants at the markets even encourage their customers without enough cash to pay with phone money. Thanks to this new business environment, there has been a noticeable change in the business relationship. The combination of 서비차 and cell phones has facilitated long-term and stable trade relationships and developed a somehow credit-based logistics systems. So once you lost your credibility with your business partners, there's no way you can survive as a servicha operator, broker, or shipper. And the expansion of the trade scale has increased the risk of business failure. And as a result, it is difficult to guarantee the operation of the new logistics system without much needed, again, credibility. And without active support from the government, the predictability of trade relations in the North Korean market has been made possible through the awakening of the self-interested market participants, which is amazing. So what happened to the market during the pandemic? One of the biggest benefits of the logistics revolution for the consumers based on this cell phone communications was price stabilization throughout the country. So merchants quickly responded to the price differences around the country, which played a role in suppressing sharp price increases. However, the tight control over movements of people and vehicles during the pandemic dramatically undermined these benefits for consumers. Price differences of goods, including food, are widening among the regions, according to recent news reports. But the price fluctuations is very hard to explain, so I don't know what the recent phenomenon trend is. And Changmadang itself is shrinking because of not only the tightened regulations on market during the pandemic, but also a lack of supplies from imported from China. And Sovicha operators are also facing huge challenges. They have seen less and less customers, and it is very hard to get vehicle parts from China now, which created serious maintenance problems. And for those who wanted to send small gifts to their family members or relatives living in other provinces, phone money was not only a convenient and reliable, but also very safe way to send the gifts in the pandemic. You don't have to worry about travel ban and bribing the guards at checkpoints. No, contact tracing is needed in this case. However, last summer, North Korea banned the transfer of phone money. Instead, it loosened the cash card membership requirements to encourage people to utilize the electronic payment system. I think that this seems to be a policy measure to regain the government's direct control of the money flow, as Professor Imul-Chul discussed. And North Korea also banned the use of foreign currency in local markets and forced the people to use the untrusted domestic won. In the long term, a North Korean electronic payment system needs to be better aligned with the purpose of mobile money, which is to improve large-scale commerce and economic activity. So far, Pyongyang has been single-minded about mobilizing financial resources for the state's fiscal needs when it comes to so-called financial reforms, like absorbing foreign currency from households. And the greatest obstacle to the electronic payment system is the people's lack of trust in the official financial institutions, even though Kim Jong-un wanted to restore the trust. Their biggest concern is that a large deposit would raise a red flag, leading security agencies to question the source of the funds and possibly confiscate the funds. So there is a persistent lack of trust in the official financial institutions. So we should also keep an eye on the impact of the pandemic and prolonged economic hardships on the long-term business relationships and the credit-based logistics systems. Let me stop here. Thank you very much for listening.
예, 감사합니다. 북한에서
Thank you.
무선 전화가
Thank you very much.
북한의
The
소매
mobile
어려운
phone has brought about significant changes to the retails, and also you told us about the changes after the COVID-19. Mr. Kim, please. My name is Kim Gyu-chul, who is studying the North Korean economics. Professor Kim, thank you very much for the insightful market review. Thank you very much. As we are lack of time, let me be brief. This research is focusing on the mobile phone and how it has changed the Changmadang and what kind of impact it has delivered to the market. As you said, in the market, after the Kim Jong-un regime, the number of the cell phone subscriber increased significantly along with the boom of the 장마당. So the same price across the country was acceptable, and the delivery and the logistics revolution was taking place. The prepaid call minute is replacing cash. That is a really interesting finding. You don't have to have your cash or the plastic card, and that kind of advanced mobile system in the advanced country is being brought to North Korea, and the credibility is becoming more important in the Changmadang, and the Changmadang is becoming more credit-based. In 2020, after the COVID-19, North Korea is sealing the borders, and even the provincial level borders are sealed and locked down. And because of that, the Changmadang economy is losing its steam, and many people working in the sectors, merchants, delivery guys, and the workers who worked in the Changmadang lost their job, and their financial income is going down. The North Korean regime has a stricter control for the communication and the financial market. So, to my understanding, I would like to suggest this. Mobile telecommunication provider, company called Orascom, and I want to understand the Orascom was merged with or in alliance with the Korea Link. I want to understand about the current status about the company and what is their business structure and the market share changes. After the COVID-19, I want to know whether the number of the subscriber after the COVID-19 went up or went down. As North Korean people are using the mobile service, I'm wondering whether the central government is worried about the information, and the information can be the threat to their regime sustainability. Probably the North Korean central government is worried about the too much information or the harmful information according to their viewpoint. And also in the Changmadang, whether there is any government intervention which can have the influence on the price and the inflation level. Thank you very much. There were lots of questions, and Mr. Kim, just 1 minute. Please be selective about your answer.
Yeah. So
Let me answer in Korean. That can be more effective. You talked about the Orascom. Orascom earned a lot of money in North Korea, but they cannot take the money back to their home country. They needed to have the foreign exchanges, and then the North Korean government is not allowing it. The chairman of the Orascom got really upset, and he had an interview with the Reuters, and he said, "I'm not going to invest anymore for the dictatorship country." There has been the negotiation for the last few years, but that has not been settled down. In the case of the Orascom, probably there will not be any further investment from the Orascom, and the business income is now being reinvested within North Korea. And North Korea turned away from the Orascom, and in 2013, a secondary company was introduced that is wholly owned by the central government. Compared to Korea Link or the Orascom, the Korea Link market share is 75%.
통합 품질이나 아니면은
But as for the core quality
저 통신 요금
and
이
the
부분을
service
이동
cost,
통신에 유리하게 이렇게 좀 manipulate하는
and the government is manipulating so that the secondary company can have an upper hand to the Korea link. And after the COVID-19,
그 다른 지방에 있는 가족이나 친지에게 그 작은
if you want to send a small amount of money to the people or the family members who are living outside of the province, then the phone money can be really helpful, and there is a more demand for the phone money. However, the 장마당 is getting weakening and it is losing the steam.
열심히 그 장사하고 벌어먹던 사람들 입장에서는
And in the 장마당,
쓸 기회가 이제
well,
과거에 비해서
you have less opportunities to use the cell phone in the 장마당. So there are ups and downs. So I'm not sure.
사실 밖에
Plus and minus, I don't know what is the net effect after the COVID-19.
핸드폰을 도입할 때부터
In North Korea, when they adopted the cell phone, the central regime was worried about the regime sustainability. So when it comes to the wiretapping technology, yes, North Korea is really good at it, and they are applying the wiretapping to almost every cell phone, and they are using the advanced technology for the wiretapping.
도감청이 100%
And the North Korean citizens are
상관없이
self-censoring their communication.
핸드폰을 쓰면서
Whether the government is listening to them or not, the North Korean people are worried, so they are
네, 대단히
refraining themselves from some dangerous talks.
예, 감사합니다. 오늘 세 분의 발표자가 있었는데요.
And we have three presenters.
이 경제 정책,
And we were able to see the macroeconomic policy and the monetary policy and some retail industry related policy about North Korea. We were able to see the multi-layered economic aspects. Probably we need 3 hours per topic. Probably we are meeting each other online, but after the COVID-19, I sincerely hope that we can have the face-to-face discussion and have an in-depth discussion on this topic. And thank you very much for your effort, and I believe that was a really interesting topic.
이 토론자들도 이 발표자들이 어떻게 더 발전시킬까 하는
And
유익한
there was a great contribution from the discussant. Thank you very much.
이제 마치도록
This
하겠습니다.
concludes this session. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you.
네, 감사합니다.